Have you ever had your entire day ruined by someone's thoughtless comment or rude behavior? Maybe it was a dismissive gesture from a colleague, an inconsiderate driver cutting you off, or even just a minor inconvenience that somehow spiraled into hours of frustration. It's maddening, isn't it? But here's what I want you to understand. No one has the power to control your emotions unless you hand them that power. What if I told you that you could develop such strong emotional mastery that even the most irritating situations couldn't shake your inner peace? Imagine walking through life with unbreakable calm, where other people's negativity simply bounces off you like water off a duck's back. That's not just wishful thinking, that's emotional intelligence in action. In today's episode, we're diving deep into the psychology and philosophy behind true emotional control. I'm going to share with you the exact strategies that have helped millions of people break free from the cycle of anger, frustration, and emotional reactivity. These aren't band-aid solutions or temporary fixes. These are life-changing principles that will transform how you experience every interaction, every challenge, and every setback. Whether you're dealing with difficult people at work, managing family conflicts, or simply trying to maintain your composure in a chaotic world, you'll discover practical tools that actually work. Before we dive in, if you're finding value in this content and want to master your emotional life, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I share new strategies for personal growth and emotional mastery every week, and I don't want you to miss any of the tools that could change your life. Now let's unlock the secrets to never getting angry again. The foundation of emotional mastery begins with a simple but profound realization. Your emotional reactions are entirely your choice. I know that might sound impossible when you're in the heat of the moment. When someone has just said something that cuts deep or acted in a way that feels completely unfair, your blood pressure rises, your heart starts racing, and every fiber of your being wants to react, to fight back, to make them understand how wrong they are. But here's the truth that changes everything. Between what happens to you and how you respond, there's a space. In that space lies your power. Think of it like this. Imagine you're wearing the world's most advanced noise-canceling headphones while walking through the busiest, loudest city street. The chaos is still there, the honking cars, the shouting, the general mayhem of urban life, but it doesn't penetrate your peaceful bubble. That's exactly what emotional mastery looks like. The external world continues to be unpredictable and sometimes hostile, but you've created an internal environment that remains calm and centered regardless of what's happening around you. Consider this scenario. You're in a meeting presenting an idea you've worked on for weeks, something you're genuinely proud of and excited about. Suddenly, a colleague interrupts you mid-sentence and dismisses your entire concept with a wave of their hand, saying something like, "That'll never work. We tried something similar years ago." Your immediate instinct might be to defend yourself, to argue back, or to feel that familiar surge of anger and embarrassment. But what if, instead of immediately reacting, you took a breath and recognized that their response says far more about them than it does about you or your idea? Maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they feel threatened by new ideas, or maybe they genuinely believe they're being helpful. By pausing and choosing your response, rather than reacting automatically, you maintain your power and your peace. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or that you don't stand up for yourself. It means you respond from a place of strength and clarity rather than emotional reactivity. The next crucial element in mastering your emotions is learning to stop expecting other people to behave the way you would. This is perhaps one of the most liberating realizations you can have, and it's also one of the hardest to accept. We all have this unconscious assumption that other people share our values, our communication style, our level of consideration for others. When they don't meet these expectations, we feel disappointed, frustrated, or even betrayed. But here's what I've learned. Everyone is operating from their own unique set of experiences, beliefs, and emotional patterns. The person who cuts you off in traffic isn't necessarily a terrible human being. They might be rushing to the hospital to see a sick family member. The colleague who takes credit for your work might be insecure about their own contributions and genuinely not realize how their actions affect others. The friend who always shows up late might have grown up in a family where punctuality wasn't valued. I'm not saying you should excuse bad behavior or lower your standards, but understanding that people act from their own internal world rather than yours frees you from taking their actions personally. Let me share a practical example of how this works. Last year, I had a friend who consistently made plans with me and then cancelled at the last minute. For months, I felt frustrated and hurt, taking each cancellation as a personal slight. I would think, if I made a commitment, I would keep it. Or, they obviously don't value our friendship. But when I stepped back and looked at the pattern, I realized this friend was going through a difficult divorce, struggling with depression, and genuinely overwhelmed by life. Their cancellations had nothing to do with me and everything to do with their current capacity. Once I understood this, I could choose how to respond. I could either continue feeling hurt and resentful, or I could adjust my expectations and find ways to maintain the friendship that worked for both of us. I chose the latter, and it saved our relationship and my peace of mind. Another major shift in emotional mastery comes from releasing the need to always be right. We live in a culture that treats being wrong as a personal failure, as if admitting we don't know something, or that we've made a mistake somehow diminishes our worth as human beings. This creates an exhausting pattern where we feel compelled to defend our position in every disagreement, to prove our point in every argument, to make sure everyone knows when we're correct about something. But what if I told you that your happiness and inner peace have absolutely nothing to do with how often you're right? What if being right all the time actually cost you more than it gives you? Think about the last argument you had where you absolutely had to prove your point. Maybe it was with your spouse about the best route to take to avoid traffic, or with a co-worker about the most efficient way to handle a project. How did you feel during that argument? Were you relaxed and happy, or were you tense, frustrated, and focused on winning? And after you proved you were right, how long did that satisfaction last? Most of the time, the victory is hollow and brief, while the tension and negative energy can linger for hours or even days. There's incredible freedom in being able to say, you know what? You might be right about that, or I see your point. Let's try it your way. This doesn't make you weak or submissive. It makes you emotionally intelligent. You're choosing peace over pride, connection over being right. Some of the most successful and emotionally stable people I know have mastered this art. They engage in discussions to understand different perspectives, not to prove their superiority. They ask questions like, help me understand your thinking on this, instead of immediately countering with their own opinion. They're comfortable with ambiguity and complexity, recognizing that most situations don't have simple right or wrong answers. One of the most damaging patterns I see in emotional reactivity is the tendency to let other people's words define our sense of self-worth. We give casual comments, throwaway remarks, and even deliberate insults the power to shake our confidence and ruin our day. But here's a question that will change your perspective. Why should someone else's opinion of you matter more than your own opinion of yourself? I'm not talking about constructive feedback from people you trust and respect. That kind of input can be incredibly valuable for growth. I'm talking about the random criticisms, the thoughtless comments, the judgmental remarks that people make, often revealing more about their own insecurities than about you. When someone criticizes your appearance, your choices, your work, or your character, you have a choice in how to receive that information. You can internalize it, turn it over in your mind, let it eat away at your confidence, or you can recognize it as their perspective, their opinion, their issue to deal with. I remember a time early in my career when I gave a presentation to a large group. Afterward, while several people complimented me on the content and delivery, one person made a comment about how I seemed nervous and suggested I work on my public speaking skills. For days, I replayed that comment in my mind, completely ignoring all the positive feedback and focusing solely on that one critical remark. I let one person's perception override my own experience and everyone else's positive response. Looking back, I realized that person might have been projecting their own fear of public speaking, or they might have been having a bad day, or they might have genuinely thought they were being helpful. But none of that matters. What matters is that I gave their words more power than they deserved, and in doing so, I damaged my own confidence and joy. The antidote to this pattern is developing what I call an internal compass of self-worth. This means your value, your confidence, and your sense of identity come from within, not from external validation or criticism. It means you can receive feedback without being devastated by it, and you can accept compliments without becoming addicted to them. Your worth becomes stable and unshakable because it's not dependent on other people's changing moods, opinions, or agendas. Setting boundaries is another crucial component of emotional mastery that many people struggle with. We often think being kind and considerate means saying yes to every request, tolerating disrespectful behavior, and putting everyone else's needs before our own. But this approach leads to resentment, burnout, and a sense of being taken advantage of. Healthy boundaries aren't walls that shut people out. They're guidelines that help others understand how to treat you and what you're available for. They're also a form of self-respect and self-care. When you don't have clear boundaries, you're essentially training people to treat you in ways that drain your energy and compromise your peace of mind. Let's say you have a coworker who has a habit of dumping last-minute urgent projects on your desk, expecting you to drop everything and help them out. If you consistently say yes without addressing the pattern, you're reinforcing their behavior and creating a dynamic where your time and energy aren't respected. A healthy boundary might sound like, I understand this is urgent for you, but I need at least 24 hours notice for additional projects so I can manage my existing workload effectively. Let's talk about how we can handle this differently in the future. This isn't mean or selfish, it's clear and reasonable. You're helping them understand your limits while also taking responsibility for protecting your own capacity. Boundaries also apply to emotional dumping, where people use you as their personal therapist, unloading all their problems and negativity without any regard for your emotional state or availability. You can be a supportive friend without becoming someone's emotional dumping ground. A boundary here might sound like, I care about you and want to support you, but I'm not in the right headspace to dive into heavy topics right now. Can we schedule a time when I can give you my full attention? The art of responding with silence is perhaps one of the most underestimated tools in emotional mastery. We live in a culture that values quick comebacks, witty responses, and having the last word. But there's incredible power in choosing not to engage, especially when someone is trying to provoke you or drag you into unnecessary conflict. Silence isn't passive or weak, it's strategic and strong. When someone makes a rude comment, tries to start an argument, or attempts to push your buttons, your silence communicates several things: that you're not willing to be drawn into their drama, that their behavior doesn't deserve your energy, and that you're confident enough in yourself not to need to defend or justify every action. I learned this lesson during a particularly challenging period at work, when I had a colleague who seemed determined to undermine me in meetings. They would make snide remarks about my ideas, question my competence in front of others, and generally try to make me look bad. My initial instinct was to fight back, to defend myself, to prove them wrong. But I realized that engaging with their behavior was only giving them more ammunition and making me look just as petty and unprofessional. Instead, I started responding with calm silence. When they made a disparaging comment, I would pause, make eye contact, and then simply continue with what I was saying or move on to the next topic. This approach was far more effective than any argument could have been. It made their behavior look childish and unprofessional while demonstrating my maturity and confidence. Gratitude is another powerful tool for transforming your emotional state, especially when you're feeling frustrated or angry. It's almost impossible to feel grateful and angry simultaneously. They're incompatible emotional states. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of fuming about the delay, you can choose to feel grateful for having a car, for the podcast or music you're listening to, or simply for having somewhere important to go. When someone criticizes you, instead of getting defensive, you can feel grateful for the opportunity to see yourself from a different perspective, even if you ultimately disagree with their assessment. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is wonderful when it's not. It's about training your mind to look for what's working, what you can appreciate, and what you can learn from every situation. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's lacking to what's present, from what's wrong to what's right. It's a mental muscle that gets stronger with practice, and the stronger it gets, the more resilient you become to life's inevitable challenges and frustrations. Reframing criticism as a tool for growth is another advanced emotional skill that can transform how you experience feedback and conflict. Instead of hearing criticism as an attack on your character or competence, you can listen for the grain of truth that might help you improve. This doesn't mean accepting every piece of feedback as valid or helpful, but it means approaching criticism with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Even poorly delivered or unfair criticism can sometimes contain useful information if you're willing to look for it. The person might be wrong about their assessment, but their perception might reveal something about how you're communicating or presenting yourself that you weren't aware of. For example, if someone tells you that you seem arrogant or dismissive, your first instinct might be to argue that you're not those things. But what if you pause and consider whether there's something in your body language, tone of voice, or communication style that's creating that impression? You might discover that while you don't intend to come across that way, there are small adjustments you could make to communicate more effectively. This approach turns criticism from a source of stress into a source of growth and self-awareness. Finally, mastering the art of letting go is perhaps the most important skill in emotional mastery. Holding on to anger, resentment, and grudges is like carrying heavy rocks in your backpack. They weigh you down and drain your energy without serving any constructive purpose. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting what happened or excusing bad behavior. It means releasing the emotional charge around past events so they don't continue to poison your present moment. This is often easier said than done, especially when you've been genuinely wronged or hurt. But consider this: when you hold on to anger and resentment, who suffers? The person who hurt you has moved on with their life, while you're still carrying the pain and replaying the incident in your mind. Your resentment doesn't punish them, it punishes you. Letting go is an act of self-compassion and self-preservation. It's choosing your own peace and well-being over the desire for revenge or vindication. The process of letting go often involves acknowledging your feelings fully, allowing yourself to grieve or be angry for a period of time, and then consciously choosing to release the emotional attachment to the outcome. It might involve forgiveness, but forgiveness is for your benefit, not theirs. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying their actions in your heart and mind. These principles work together to create a completely different way of moving through the world. Instead of being reactive and at the mercy of other people's moods and behaviors, you become proactive and centered in your own emotional stability. Instead of feeling like a victim of circumstances, you recognize your power to choose your response to any situation. Instead of being drained by conflict and negativity, you learn to protect your energy and maintain your peace regardless of what's happening around you. Remember, emotional mastery isn't about becoming emotionless or indifferent to what happens in your life. It's about developing the strength and wisdom to respond rather than react, to choose your battles wisely, and to maintain your inner peace even in challenging circumstances. These skills take practice and patience with yourself, but the freedom and confidence they bring are worth every bit of effort you invest in developing them. Your emotional life can be entirely under your control, and that control is the foundation of a truly fulfilling and peaceful existence.